I noticed Reid before he ever spoke to me. Not because he was loud. Actually, it was the opposite. Most new delivery hires came in trying too hard. Talking too much, acting like they already knew the routes, joking with dispatch like they'd worked there for years. Reid walked into the warehouse at 6 in the morning wearing a dark hoodie and that permanently tired expression people get when life's been hitting them a little too consistently. He signed papers. Nodded at people. Barely spoke. And somehow, I kept looking at him anyway. New guy's your problem now. My manager, Elena, told me while tossing me a scanner. His training partner quit yesterday. Problem? Reid muttered under his breath. I smirked before I could stop myself. Elena pointed at me. Jason knows downtown routes better than anyone. Try not to scare each other. Reid finally looked at me directly then. Gray eyes. Sharp jaw. Dark blonde hair that looked like he cut it himself with little concern for accuracy. He wasn't intimidating exactly, but there was something guarded about him. Like he expected disappointment before conversations even started. I don't scare easy, he said flatly. Cool, I replied. Because this job is awful. That got the smallest reaction from him. Not a smile. More like he almost smiled and decided against it. By 7:30 we were loading boxes into the van together. The thing about delivery work is that you learn people fast. Faster than normal jobs. There's no office space to hide inside. No polished meetings. You spend 10 hours in traffic together, carrying heavy packages, eating terrible gas station food, listening to each other breathe through exhaustion. People crack open eventually. Reid didn't. At first. You always this cheerful? He asked after watching me reorganize half the van because he stacked the boxes by size instead of route order. You always stack like a psychopath? I stack them efficiently. You stack them stupidly. That earned me an actual smile. Tiny. Fast. Gone immediately. But I caught it. Wow, I said. You do have facial muscles. Don't get used to it. The first few hours passed easier than I expected. Reid learned quickly. Didn't complain. Didn't freeze under pressure when dispatch started rerouting us every 20 minutes because of traffic downtown. By lunchtime, we were sitting on the back of the van eating sandwiches from a deli near Riverside. You from here? I asked. Nah. Where from then? He shrugged. Small town outside Dayton. Sounds thrilling. It wasn't. Something in his tone shut the conversation down naturally after that. I noticed he did that a lot. Opened the door half an inch, then closed it before anyone could walk through. Still, there was something easy about being around him. Not immediately comfortable. Not warm. Just easy. Like he understood silence wasn't always awkward. Around 3 that afternoon, my phone buzzed while we were unloading packages outside an apartment building. It was Ben. Again. Reid glanced over as I sighed at the screen. You gonna answer that? Nah. Girlfriend? I laughed immediately. Definitely not. His expression shifted slightly at that. Barely noticeable. But enough. Boyfriend? He asked, trying to sound casual. No, I said. Ben's just dramatic. That was it. Just a noise. But something changed after that. Subtle. He got quieter. Not rude. Not cold. Just sharper around the edges. At one stop, a woman flirted with me while signing for a package, and Reid suddenly became deeply invested in reorganizing envelopes 3 feet away. At another, Ben called again, and Reid muttered, Guy really needs a hobby. I looked over at him. You jealous of my annoying friends already? He snorted. Trust me, I barely know you. But he said it while looking out the window instead of at me. And for some reason, that stayed in my head the rest of the day. By the time we got back to the warehouse, both of us were exhausted. I hopped out of the van first, stretching my shoulders. You survived, I told him. Barely. You coming back tomorrow? Reid grabbed his backpack from the passenger seat. Depends. On? He looked at me for a second too long before answering. Whether you're always this irritating. I grinned. You like irritating. That tiny, almost smile appeared again. See you tomorrow, Jason. And somehow, hearing my name in his voice felt more personal than it should have after one day. Reid did come back the next day. And the day after that. By the end of the week, people at the warehouse had already started grouping us together like it was automatic. Jason, your boyfriend forgot scanner batteries again. One of the drivers yelled across the loading dock Friday morning. Reid nearly dropped the package he was holding. He's not. I laughed before he could finish. Relax. They say that about everyone. Seems annoying. You'll survive. But he stayed weirdly quiet after that. Not upset exactly. Just thoughtful. The thing about Reid was that he reacted physically before verbally. His jaw tightened when something bothered him. His shoulders locked up. He'd stare at nothing for a few seconds too long before answering. You had to learn him sideways. By the second week, we'd fallen into routines without discussing them. I grabbed coffee. He drove mornings because I hated traffic before caffeine. I handled apartment deliveries because Reid somehow managed to offend every receptionist we met without even trying. You have resting criminal face, I informed him one afternoon. I literally said thank you. Yeah, but you look like you were threatening her family. That got another brief smile. I started chasing those smiles more than I should have. Not intentionally at first. It just became my favorite part of the day. One rainy Tuesday, dispatch overloaded our route so badly we didn't finish until almost 9 at night. We were soaked. Tired. Starving. Reid sat in the driver's seat staring blankly through the windshield, while rain hammered the van roof. If Elena adds one more stop to this route tomorrow, he muttered, I'm driving this van into the river. You say that now, but you'd miss me too much. He looked over slowly. You assume a lot. You keep showing up. That's called employment. Sure. I expected him to roll his eyes. Instead, he kept looking at me. The inside of the van suddenly felt very small. What? I asked eventually. Nothing. But it definitely wasn't nothing. He looked away first. Later that night, we stopped at a diner off Maple Avenue because neither of us had energy left to cook. Reid sat across from me in a booth, sleeves pushed up, tired enough that the guarded parts of him kept slipping accidentally. You always live alone? He asked while stirring coffee he barely drank. Since 21. You like it? Most days. He nodded slowly like he understood that answer more than he wanted to. What about you? I asked. Roommates. You hate them? I tolerate them. That bad? A tiny shrug. One steals food. The other keeps trying to set me up with women. I snorted into my fries. You poor thing. His eyes flicked to mine immediately. There it was again. That strange pause whenever conversations drifted anywhere near dating. You seeing anyone? I asked casually. Reid leaned back in the booth. Why? Curious. Dangerous trait for a delivery driver. Reid. He exhaled quietly through his nose. No, he said finally. Not seeing anyone. Something in me relaxed at that answer before I could stop it. Which was stupid. We'd known each other barely 3 weeks. Still, I noticed things after that. Like how Reid got quieter whenever customers flirted with me. How he'd suddenly interrupt conversations if another driver kept me talking too long at dispatch. How his mood visibly improved whenever our shifts got paired together instead of split. At first I thought I imagined it. Then Ben visited the warehouse. And Reid made it painfully obvious. Ben showed up around lunch carrying coffees because he worked nearby and liked bothering me during shifts. He walked straight into the loading area yelling, Jason, your taste in music is ruining my life. I laughed immediately. You came here voluntarily. Ben handed me coffee before noticing Reid standing nearby scanning packages. Oh, Ben said. You must be Reid. Reid looked up slowly. Must be. This one talks about you constantly. Ben continued casually. Ben. What? You do? Reid's expression changed so fast I almost missed it. Surprise first. Then something warmer. Then guarded again almost immediately. You exaggerate, Reid muttered. I absolutely don't, Ben said. Jason's obsessed with his emotionally unavailable work husband. Okay. I cut in quickly. You can leave now. Ben grinned like the menace he was. Nice meeting you, Reid. Then he disappeared back outside. Silence. I avoided looking directly at Reid while opening my coffee. Well, I said. That was humiliating. Work husband? Reid asked. I groaned. Ignore him. But Reid wasn't ignoring it. I could feel him thinking. You talk about me? He asked finally. I shrugged, suddenly weirdly self-conscious. You're around 10 hours a day. Stories happen. There was that sound again. That thoughtful little noise. Then he grabbed another package and said, way too casually, Ben likes you. I blinked. Ben's straight. Reid looked unconvinced. He is, I insisted. Sure. I stared at him for a second. Then realization hit me all at once. Oh my God, I said slowly. What? You're jealous. He scoffed instantly. I'm literally not. You absolutely are. I barely know the guy. That has never stopped jealousy before. Reid shook his head, scanning another box aggressively. You talk too much. But the tips of his ears had gone red. And suddenly everything made a lot more sense. After that, I couldn't unsee it. Every little reaction Reid had suddenly stood out like someone had turned the brightness up on him. If another driver kept me talking too long after shift, Reid got impatient. If dispatch paired me with someone else for a morning route, Reid became weirdly irritable for the rest of the day. And if Ben texted me while we were in the van, Reid acted like my phone personally offended him. You gonna answer that? He asked one afternoon while drumming his fingers against the steering wheel. I glanced down at the screen. It's literally a meme. I looked over slowly. You know you make that sound every time you're annoyed. What sound? That judgmental little thing. I do not. You absolutely do. Reid rolled his eyes toward the windshield, but I caught the corner of his mouth twitching. The problem was, once I realized he might actually be jealous, I started paying more attention to him too. Too much attention. I noticed how tired he looked before coffee. How he unconsciously leaned toward me when we laughed. How his voice got quieter sometimes when it was just us in the van late at night. And I noticed something else too. Reid barely talked about his personal life. At all. No stories about exes. No girls. Nothing. At first I assumed he was private. Then I started wondering if it was something else. That thought sat in my head for days. Until Friday night. We finished early for once, and a bunch of drivers decided to grab drinks at a sports bar near the warehouse. I almost skipped it, but Elena cornered me near dispatch. You're socializing, she ordered. Threatening employees feels illegal. Go drink overpriced beer with your coworkers. So I went. Reid showed up 20 minutes later wearing a black jacket instead of his work hoodie, and I immediately understood why two different bartenders suddenly became extremely attentive to our table. He looked unfairly good outside the warehouse. Less exhausted. More dangerous somehow. You clean up nice, I told him when he slid into the booth beside me. You say weird things when you drink. I've had half a beer. Exactly. The night started easy enough. Music loud. Everyone yelling over each other. Dispatch horror stories getting more dramatic with every round. Reid stayed mostly quiet, but he kept close to me without seeming aware of it. Shoulder brushing mine when people squeezed past. Knee bumping mine under the table. Small things. But I noticed every single one. At some point, I got up to order another drink. And that's when it happened. The bartender smiled at me while taking my card. You here with anyone? I laughed lightly. Unfortunately, yes. She grinned. Shame. Before I could answer, another voice cut in behind me. He's working tomorrow, Reid said flatly. I turned around. Reid stood there holding empty glasses, jaw tight in that familiar way. The bartender blinked between us. Okay. I stared at him while she walked away. Did you just scare off my chance at happiness? She was flirting. So you're bad at noticing when people are trying to get your attention. I laughed once in disbelief. You cannot possibly be serious right now. I'm serious. That stopped me. Reid almost never admitted emotions directly. He dodged, deflected, buried things under sarcasm. But right then he looked genuinely irritated. With her? I asked carefully. With everyone lately, he muttered. Something warm spread through my chest before common sense could stop it. I lowered my voice. Why? His eyes met mine immediately. And for one dangerous second, the noise of the bar disappeared completely. Then one of our coworkers yelled Reid's name from across the room, breaking whatever that moment was supposed to become. Reid stepped back first. Forget it, he said quickly. But I didn't forget it. Not even close. An hour later, people started leaving in groups, drunk and loud and already complaining about morning shifts. Reid offered me a ride home because my car was still in the shop. The drive was quiet at first. Streetlights flashed across his face while he drove, one hand resting loose against the steering wheel. You're thinking too hard, he said suddenly. You're deflecting too hard. That doesn't even make sense. It does to me. That got a reluctant laugh out of him. Then silence again. Heavy this time. You know, I said carefully, staring out the window. Most straight guys don't get possessive over bartenders flirting with their coworkers. Reid's grip tightened slightly on the wheel. I know. My heart stumbled hard against my ribs. I turned toward him slowly. Reid. I said I know. His voice came out rougher this time. Honest. Terrified. And suddenly I understood why he looked trapped every time conversations got too close to this. Neither of us mentioned it the next day, which honestly made everything worse. Reid picked me up for shift at 6:30 in the morning like usual, coffee in the cup holder beside me, tired expression firmly back in place. Morning, he muttered. Morning. Normal. Too normal. Like he hadn't basically admitted something life-changing in his truck 12 hours earlier. I kept waiting for him to say something else. Clarify. Take it back. Joke about it. He didn't. And somehow that made it feel more real. The route was brutal that day too. Rain, traffic, 3 separate apartment buildings with broken elevators. Usually Reid and I handled stressful shifts well together, but now every little thing felt charged. His hand brushing mine while grabbing the scanner. His knee pressing against mine in the van during sharp turns. The way his eyes kept flicking toward me when he thought I wasn't looking. Around noon, we stopped outside a coffee shop while waiting for dispatch to reroute us. Reid leaned against the van smoking one of the cigarettes he claimed he was trying to quit. I stood beside him eating terrible vending machine pretzels. You know those things taste like drywall, right? He asked. You smoke cigarettes. Fair. Silence settled again. Not awkward. Just tense in that unbearable almost their way. Finally, I looked over at him. So are we gonna talk about last night? Reid stared out at the street. Depends. On? How honest you want me to be? That answer hit harder than I expected. I folded my arms. Start somewhere. He took a slow drag before answering. I don't really know what this is, he admitted quietly. Or when it started. My chest tightened immediately. But something happens when other people flirt with you, he continued. And I hate it. You hate being jealous? I hate feeling out of control. That sounded more honest than anything he'd said to me before. I watched him carefully. Have you felt like this before? His jaw tightened instantly. There it was. Fear. Reid. He exhaled sharply through his nose. Not really. Not really isn't an answer. I know. The rain tapped against the side of the van while he thought. Then finally, you're the first guy I've wanted to keep around. Every coherent thought disappeared from my brain for a second. He said it so simply too. No dramatic confession. No performance. Just truth. Reid glanced at me then, like he regretted saying it out loud already. Forget I said that. Absolutely not. He groaned quietly, rubbing a hand over his face. Jason. No, because now I need details. There are no details. You don't get possessive over coworkers for no details. I'm not possessive. I stared at him. He stared back. Then, okay, maybe a little. I laughed before I could stop myself. And somehow that broke the tension enough for Reid to smile too. Small. Reluctant. Real. God, I liked him. That realization landed all at once and way too hard. Not just attraction. Not curiosity. I genuinely liked being around him. Maybe more than I should have already. Dispatch interrupted us before I could think too much about that. The rest of the afternoon passed strangely softer after the conversation. Reid stayed close to me all shift like he was unconsciously recalibrating around whatever we'd finally admitted. At one stop, an older woman smiled at us and said, "You two make a cute couple." I expected Reid to freeze. Instead, he just blinked once and muttered, "We're not," then stopped himself halfway through the sentence. I looked over immediately. His ears went slightly red. The woman smiled knowingly while signing for her package. Back in the van, I couldn't stop grinning. "You're enjoying this too much," Reid muttered while pulling away from the curb. "You almost didn't deny it." "I started to. But you didn't finish." He shot me a look. "You analyze everything?" "Only things I care about." That shut him up instantly. The silence afterward felt different. Heavier. Warmer. Reid stared ahead at traffic for a long moment before speaking again. "You should probably know something." The seriousness in his voice made my stomach tighten. "What?" "I'm bad at this." "At what?" He shrugged tightly. "Feelings. Relationships. Whatever this is becoming." I leaned back in my seat watching him carefully. "You think I'm good at this? You seem good with people." "That doesn't mean I know what I'm doing." Reid nodded slowly like he was storing that information somewhere important. Then, quieter. "I don't want you thinking I'm messing with you." That hit me harder than any flirtation had. Because underneath all his jealousy and tension and sarcasm, Reid genuinely seemed scared of hurting me. "You're not," I said softly. His eyes flicked toward me immediately. And there it was again. That unbearable pull between us. Strong enough now that pretending felt impossible. By the time we got back to the warehouse that night, I could feel something shifting permanently between us. Not official. Not defined. But real. Dangerously real. And judging by the way Reid kept looking at me when he thought I wouldn't notice. He felt it too. Things got dangerous after that. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just quietly impossible to ignore. Reid started touching me more. Little things at first. A hand against my back guiding me through crowded loading docks. His knee pressed against mine in the van without moving away. Fingers brushing my wrist when he handed me coffee in the mornings. None of it accidental anymore. And the worst part was how natural it felt. Like we'd already slipped into something neither of us knew how to name yet. A few days later, Elena paired us on an overnight rush route because 2 drivers called out sick. "Try not to kill each other," she said while tossing us extra scanners. "No promises," Reid muttered. But he smiled while saying it. By 10:30 that night, the city had mostly emptied out. Streets quieter. Delivery stops farther apart. Reid drove with one arm resting against the open window, while music played low through the speakers. I watched him longer than I should have. "You keep staring at me like that," he said without looking over. "And I'm driving into a building." I laughed softly. "You noticed? You're not subtle. Neither are you lately." That earned me a sideways glance. Warm. Nervous. Too honest. We stopped outside a closed pharmacy for a late delivery pickup, and Reid killed the engine without immediately getting out. Rain tapped softly against the windshield again. It felt weirdly intimate inside the van at night. No warehouse noise. No dispatch voices. No coworkers interrupting us every 5 minutes. Just us. You ever think about quitting? I asked quietly. The job? Yeah. Reid leaned back in his seat. Sometimes. What stops you? He looked at me then. Not even slightly subtle this time. You know the answer. My heartbeat immediately became a problem. Reid. I'm serious. His voice had gone low again. Careful in that way he got when something mattered too much. I hated this job before you, he admitted. Now I look forward to work, and it's honestly embarrassing. I smiled despite myself. That's weirdly sweet. Don't tell anyone. The air between us shifted again. Closer. Reid's eyes dropped briefly to my mouth before flicking away almost immediately. I noticed. He noticed me noticing. Neither of us moved. Then my phone buzzed loudly in the cup holder, ruining the moment completely. Ben, you alive, or did your work husband finally murder you? I groaned out loud. Reid looked deeply offended immediately. Why does he keep calling me that? Because he enjoys chaos. You talk to him about me a lot? I smirked slightly. Jealous again? I'm trying not to be. That answer hit harder than I expected. Not defensive. Not sarcastic. Just honest. I looked over at him carefully. You know you could just ask me things directly, right? Like what? Like whether I'm interested in someone. Reid went quiet immediately. Then, are you? I held his gaze for a long second. Yes. His breathing visibly changed. Who? You really need me to answer that? The tension inside the van became unbearable instantly. Reid stared at me like he was trying to figure out whether this was real or some elaborate joke at his expense. Jason, he said quietly. I don't think I'd ever heard my name sound like that before. Soft. Careful. Wanting. And suddenly I was very aware of how close we were sitting. I need you to be honest with me too, I said finally. I am being honest. No deflecting this time. He nodded once. So I asked the question that had been sitting between us for weeks now. What exactly are you scared of? Reid looked away first. Not angry. Not ashamed. Just exposed. I'm scared this matters more to me than it should already, he admitted quietly. And I don't know how to do this halfway. God. Everything inside me softened at once. Because beneath all the jealousy and tension and confusion, Reid wasn't playing games. He was terrified because he actually cared. I reached over before I could overthink it and touched his hand lightly where it rested beside the gear shift. Reid froze instantly. His eyes dropped to my hand, then lifted slowly back to my face. You okay? I asked softly. He let out a shaky breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Not even remotely. But he turned his hand over anyway, threading his fingers carefully through mine. And just like that, the entire world felt very, very different. After that night, pretending became impossible. Not because anything huge happened immediately. Actually, it was almost worse how normal everything stayed. Reid still picked me up before shifts. Still brought me coffee without asking my order. Still argued with GPS directions like the navigation system had personally insulted him. But now his hand found mine whenever we sat parked too long at red lights. Now his eyes lingered openly when he looked at me. Now there was this constant awareness between us that made every shared silence feel intimate. 3 days after the hand-holding incident, Ben cornered me outside the warehouse. You look insane, he informed me. Good morning to you too. No, like genuinely. You're doing the smiling at your phone thing. I frowned. I do not. You absolutely do. Before I could deny it again, Reid walked out of the warehouse carrying 2 scanners and immediately stopped when he saw Ben standing too close to me. There it was. That tiny shift in his expression. Ben noticed it too. Oh no. His eyes lit up with pure evil immediately. You must be Reid, he said brightly. Jason's work husband. Ben, I warned. Reid looked unimpressed. You say that like it's a diagnosis. It basically is. I groaned into my hands. Ben grinned between us like he just discovered state secrets. Wow. Okay. The tension here is insane. Leave, I said flatly. Jason talks about you constantly, by the way. Ben. What? He does. Reid looked at me immediately. Not smug. Not teasing. Almost hopeful. Which somehow embarrassed me way more. Don't encourage him, I muttered while grabbing one of the scanners. Ben backed away laughing. I'm rooting for you idiots. Then he disappeared across the parking lot before I could threaten him properly. Silence. Reid watched me carefully while we walked toward the van. You talk about me constantly? He asked finally. I avoided eye contact immediately. You're both dramatic. That's not a no. I opened the passenger door aggressively. Drive the van, Reid. He laughed quietly under his breath. God, that sound was becoming dangerous to me. The shift itself went terribly. Not because of us. Because dispatch overloaded our route again, and somehow every customer in the city decided to become difficult simultaneously. By 6 p.m., both of us were exhausted and soaked from unloading deliveries in freezing rain. Reid slammed the van door harder than necessary after one customer spent 10 minutes complaining about a package being slightly damp. If one more person talks to me today, he muttered, I'm becoming a missing person. I laughed tiredly from the passenger seat. You're very pretty when you're angry. That slipped out accidentally. Reid froze halfway through putting on his seatbelt. I froze too. Then slowly. You think I'm pretty? His voice had gone quieter. I stared at the dashboard immediately. I said that out loud, huh? You did. Cool. Great. Awesome. Beside me, Reid suddenly looked less exhausted. Actually, he looked wrecked in an entirely different way now. Jason. I still couldn't look directly at him. What? You know I look at you like that too, right? That dragged my eyes toward him instantly. Rain streaked across the windows around us while Reid watched me with this unbearably open expression I'd never seen from him before. No jealousy. No sarcasm. No guardedness. Just honesty. I've been trying not to, he admitted softly. But it's getting difficult. My chest physically hurt. Because I understood exactly what he meant. The air inside the van suddenly felt too warm. Neither of us moved for a second. Then Reid reached over slowly, giving me plenty of time to stop him, and brushed his fingers lightly against my jaw. The touch was so careful it almost undid me completely. You okay? He asked quietly. I nodded once, not trusting my voice anymore. His thumb brushed lightly against my cheek before he pulled back again like he was scared of wanting too much. That somehow affected me even more. Reid, I said softly. Yeah? You know this is gonna become a whole thing, right? A small smile appeared. Probably. You seem suspiciously calm about that. I'm literally panicking internally. I laughed quietly. Then, before I could lose my nerve completely, I leaned across the center console and kissed him. Just quick. Careful. Enough to tell the truth. Reid made the softest shock sound against my mouth before kissing me back immediately. And somehow that felt even more dangerous than the jealousy ever had. The second Reid kissed me back, everything changed. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just completely. It only lasted a few seconds before someone honked behind us in traffic, making both of us jerk apart like we'd committed a crime. Reid stared straight ahead through the windshield afterward, one hand still tight around the steering wheel. Well, he said hoarsely. I laughed nervously. Yeah. Well. Neither of us moved immediately. Then Reid covered his face with one hand and let out an exhausted groan. I have been thinking about doing that for weeks. My heart did something deeply embarrassing inside my chest. Weeks? I repeated. You're focusing on the wrong part of that sentence. I couldn't stop smiling now. Actually couldn't stop. Reid noticed too. You look very pleased with yourself. You were jealous for weeks. You're never letting that go, are you? Absolutely not. That finally dragged a real laugh out of him again. God. I wanted to keep hearing that sound forever. The rest of the shift became borderline impossible after that. Every glance lasted too long. Every accidental touch immediately turned intentional. At one point, Reid handed me a package and our fingers brushed, and he looked at me like he forgot what planet he was on for a second. You good? I asked quietly. Not even a little. And somehow hearing that made me feel calmer instead of worse. Like we were finally standing in the same place emotionally. Around 9 p.m., we finished our last delivery near the riverfront. The city looked softer at night, their lights reflecting off dark water, streets mostly empty except for scattered traffic. Reid parked the van near the curb but didn't start driving back yet. The silence between us felt full now instead of tense. He looked over at me carefully. You regret that? The question landed heavier than I expected. Not because I regretted kissing him. I absolutely didn't. But because Reid sounded genuinely braced for disappointment. I turned toward him fully. Do you? No. His answer came instantly. Certain. Then quieter. I just keep waiting for this to feel less real. That honesty nearly wrecked me all over again. I leaned back against the seat watching him. You know what's funny? What? I thought you hated me when we first met. Reid looked offended immediately. I did not. You glared at me for 2 straight weeks. You were annoying. I'm still annoying. Yeah, he admitted softly. But now I like it. The way he said it made warmth spread through my entire chest. Reid looked down briefly, gathering his thoughts. I've never done this before, he admitted finally. I blinked. Like with a guy? He nodded once. I kinda figured. You did? You react like someone learning emotions in real time. That earned me a glare. Then a reluctant smile. I mean it though, he said more seriously. I don't know what I'm doing. You think I do? You seem less terrified. I considered that honestly. I think I'm just less surprised. Reid frowned slightly. What does that mean? It means I noticed you before you noticed yourself. That shut him up instantly. His expression shifted slowly from confusion to realization. You knew? Not immediately, I admitted. But eventually? Yeah. Reid leaned back in his seat, staring at the ceiling of the van for a second like his entire life suddenly made more sense in retrospect. That's honestly humiliating. I laughed softly. You were not subtle. I thought I was. You looked ready to fight Ben every time he texted me. He uses too many exclamation points. That's your defense? It's a valid complaint. I shook my head, smiling. Then Reid looked at me again. Really looked. You know what the worst part is? He asked quietly. What? I kept trying to convince myself you couldn't possibly want this too. Something inside me softened immediately. Because beneath all his jealousy and intensity, Reid genuinely hadn't believed he had a chance with me. I reached over and took his hand again automatically now. No hesitation this time. Reid's fingers closed tightly around mine almost immediately. You're an idiot, I told him softly. Probably. But you're my idiot now. The second those words left my mouth, Reid looked completely stunned. Then something warm and helpless crossed his face so quickly it almost hurt to look at directly. Jason, he said quietly. And there it was again. That look. Like I mattered to him way more than he knew how to handle already. Honestly? I was pretty sure he mattered to me that much too. Things should have felt awkward after that. That's what surprised me most. I expected tension. Confusion. At least one painfully uncomfortable shift where Reid and I suddenly forgot how to act normal around each other. Instead, everything somehow felt easier. Like we'd spent weeks fighting gravity and finally stopped pretending we weren't falling in the same direction. The next morning, Reid picked me up for work 10 minutes early. I climbed into the passenger seat and immediately noticed the coffee already waiting for me. Extra cream. Exactly how I liked it. You remembered my order, I said. Reid kept his eyes on the road. You say this tastes like depression every time they make it wrong. Hard to forget. I laughed quietly. Then I noticed something else. He looked nervous. Not distant. Not regretful. Just careful. You okay? I asked softly. Yeah. You're doing the jaw thing. The what? The thing where you tense your jaw when you're overthinking. Reid looked genuinely offended. You analyze me way too much. You like it? Silence. Then, yeah, he admitted quietly. I do. God. That still affected me every single time. At the warehouse, things became complicated immediately because apparently once you kiss someone, your coworkers suddenly develop supernatural observational abilities. You two are being weird, Elena announced before 8 a.m. Reid nearly choked on his coffee. We're literally loading boxes, I replied. You're loading boxes romantically. That's not a thing. It is now. Reid grabbed a scanner aggressively. Can we go? Elena watched him walk away before looking back at me slowly. Oh, she said. I pointed at her immediately. Don't. She grinned. I didn't say anything. You were about to. Was I? You love workplace gossip too much. I absolutely do, she admitted proudly. I escaped before she could interrogate me further. Outside, Reid stood beside the van pretending not to panic. She knows, he muttered the second I walked over. She suspects. She definitely knows. I climbed into the passenger seat smiling. You're cute when you're stressed. Reid stopped moving entirely. That word hit him hard every single time. You can't just say things like that casually, he muttered while starting the engine. Why not? Because then I forget how conversations work. I laughed all the way out of the parking lot. Around noon, dispatch rerouted us across downtown after another driver's van broke down. Traffic was awful. Reid grew progressively more irritated every 15 minutes. Then my phone buzzed. Ben, did you kiss him yet, or are you both still communicating through emotional damage? I burst out laughing immediately. Reid glanced over. What? Ben's bullying me. He's very committed to that hobby. He asked if I kissed you yet. Reid nearly missed the turn. The tips of his ears went red instantly. That's illegal information for him to have. He guessed. That's worse. I looked over grinning. You're blushing. I'm driving. That's not a denial. Jason. The warning in his voice completely failed because he looked too flustered to sound intimidating. I smiled softer this time. Relax. I didn't tell him anything. Reid nodded once, visibly relieved. Then quieter. Did you want to? That question surprised me. Tell him? Yeah. I considered it honestly. No, I admitted. This feels private right now. Reid looked at me for a second longer than necessary. Good, he said softly. Something about that answer settled warmly in my chest. Not because he wanted secrecy. Because he wanted something that belonged to just us for a little while longer. Later that afternoon, we stopped for food between deliveries and ended up sharing fries in the back of the van while rain hammered the roof again. Reid stole half my drink without asking. You're unbelievable, I informed him. You weren't drinking it. That's not permission. He looked completely unbothered. You'll survive. I watched him for a second too long. Reid noticed immediately. What? You seem happier lately. The reaction to that was immediate and visible. His entire expression softened before he could stop it. That obvious? Very. He looked down at the fries between us, suddenly quieter. I forgot things could feel like this, he admitted. My chest tightened. What do you mean? Reid shrugged slightly. Looking forward to someone. Missing them when they're not around. He glanced up at me carefully. Feeling calmer when they are. The way he said it made the space between us feel unbearably small again. I reached over automatically and bumped my knee lightly against his. Reid smiled instantly this time. No hesitation anymore. And sitting there together in the back of that delivery van, rain outside, cold fries between us, I had the sudden terrifying realization that this wasn't becoming temporary. It wasn't just tension. Or curiosity. Or coworkers crossing lines. I was falling for him. Fast. And judging by the way Reid kept looking at me lately, he already had.